Okay, we'll call the meeting to order. Welcome to the August meeting of the Sayreville Board of Education. Please rise for the pledge to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Public notice that we read at the start of the public meeting. Ms. Hill, roll call, please.
Mr. Balca?
Here.
Mrs. Bacco? Here. Mr. Bishada?
Present.
Mrs. Bloom?
Here.
Mr. Callahan?
Here.
Mr. Esposito?
Here.
Ms. Rubio?
Here.
Mr. Walsh?
Here.
Mr. Sayak?
Here. Can I have a motion for executive, please?
So moved.
By Mrs. Bloom, do I have a second?
Second.
By Mr. Callahan. Could you read the resolution, please?
Whereas Section 8 of the Open Public Meetings Act, Chapter 231, Public Law 1975, permits the exclusion of the public from a meeting in certain circumstances. And whereas this public body is of the opinion that such circumstances presently exist. Now therefore be it resolved by the Board of Education of the Borough of Sayreville, County of Middlesex, State of New Jersey as follows. The public shall be excluded from discussion of and action upon the hereinafter specified subject matters. The general nature of the subject matters to be discussed is as follows. Personnel, including but not limited to agenda items, negotiations for the SCA, a student matter, and matters falling under attorney-client privilege regarding the trademark. It is anticipated at this time that the above stated subject matter shall be made public at such time as the need for non-disclosure no longer exists. This resolution shall take effect immediately. Mr. Balca?
Can we add the letter we got regarding the Ed Council?
Oh, the attorney, attorney-client privilege, School Ethics Commission ruling.
If we have time.
Thank you.
Did
Okay,
you include
that's added.
that interlocal agreement on there? Is that included in attorney-client privilege?
Which interlocal agreement?
The shared, yeah, with the borough?
Oh.
It's on the addendum?
I think we can.
Yeah, I mean, we can put it on. If it veers from attorney-client privilege, we'll have to discuss it in public. But to be safe, let's put it on.
Okay. Mr. Balca?
Yes.
Mrs. Bacco?
Yes.
Mr. Bishada?
Yes.
Mrs. Bloom?
Yes.
Mr. Callahan?
Yes.
Mr. Esposito?
Yes.
Ms. Rubio?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mr. Sayak?
Yes. Okay, the meeting is closed. We will reconvene at 7:30. Thank you. Okay, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the August meeting of the Sayreville Board of Education. Take notice this public meeting of the Sayreville Board of Ed was transmitted at home distributed in the Star Ledger in accordance with Chapter 231, Public Law 1975. Further, in accordance with NJSA 10:4-6-21, a copy is posted outside the Secretary's office and also filed with the Clerk of the Borough of Sayreville. Please rise for the pledge to the flag. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Ms. Hill, roll call, please.
Mr. Balca?
Here.
Mrs. Bacco?
Here.
Mr. Bishada?
Present.
Mrs. Bloom?
Here.
Mr. Callahan?
Here.
Mr. Esposito?
Here.
Ms. Rubio?
Here.
Mr. Walsh?
Here.
Mr. Sayak?
Here. Could you summarize our executive session discussions, please?
The board discussed negotiations related to the SCA, a student matter, and matters falling under attorney-client privilege related to the trademark, the School Ethics Commission decision, and the interlocal agreement.
Okay, thank you very much. And we'll turn our attention to Mr. Lewis, our student council representative, for his report.
Hello, once again. It's the summer, so not as much is going on in school. We have the freshman orientation occurred, which went smoothly, and the students got their schedules, and were able to tour the school and test their lockers. Seniors got their parking permits, and the fall sports are beginning to take, starting to scrimmage. The first games are coming up, and we're already getting ready for homecoming and all that stuff related to the first couple weeks of school with the UBU assembly and all that stuff. So we're student council and all the other clubs and sports are getting ready for the start of the school year and all the seasons.
Okay, any questions for Mr. Lewis? I've got two quick ones. First of all, when is homecoming?
I don't know yet.
Okay, and you know, actually, it may even be on the agenda tonight, because we approved the whole listing of activities, okay? All right, so somebody can look for that while I ask my second question.
October 19th.
October 19th, thank you. And then the UBU assembly. I remember the UBU assembly when I did it about 30 years ago. So what Could you just tell us what the
Yeah,
UBU assembly is today?
The student council sets up a whole show, and it kind of introduces the freshmen that, for those first days, it's just a period or two long in which we show how they can all fit in. We perform different skits and on the different cliques in school. So like some people will act as the jocks, some people act as, the nerds, the know-it-alls, the club, the people that are involved in so many clubs, all those cliques. But then at the end, we kind of wrap it up and say how they all fit together and how the freshmen can get involved, but also fit together and, keep progressing academically, but also clubs and sports and stuff like that.
Okay, is there a component of that about social media and, appropriate posting on social media and, that whole piece? Have we taken UBU to cyberspace, I guess is my larger question.
We keep moving toward that. We can definitely implement that this year. We do, in some of the skits, we do use like the phones, be like, in some of the skits, some people use the phones like, I'm going to post this, but we don't get as involved as much, but we could incorporate it this year.
That's something you probably want to think about,
Yeah.
especially in this day and age where everything is going online. And I even see adults a lot of times with the stuff that they post on forums. It's interesting. Let's just put it that way. Any other questions for our student rep? Okay, then we will move on. Thank you, Mr. Lewis. We have our correspondence, the two monthly work order and technology reports. And next up is our approval of minutes. Can I have a motion to approve the minutes of our July 26th meeting?
So moved.
By Mrs. Bloom.
Second.
I have a second by Mr. Walsh. Any comments on the minutes? Hearing none, roll call on our minutes, please.
Mr. Balca?
Yes.
Mrs. Batco?
Yes.
Mr. Bishada?
Yes.
Mrs. Bloom?
Yes.
Mr. Callahan?
Yes.
Mr. Esposito?
Yes.
Ms. Rubio?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mr. Syak?
Yes. Dr. Labby, we'll turn it over to you for your phenomenal superintendent's report.
Well, I don't know about phenomenal.
I'm sorry, I forgot the word brief. Phenomenally brief superintendent's report.
The phenomenal and brief sound alike, so I can understand why you got confused there. By the way, Mr. Lewis, I'm liking the clean.
Thank you.
Although I did like, the beard too. Beginning with finance and infrastructure, if I can turn your attention to items 9 and 36. 9 can be found on page 2, 36 on the addendum. We're asking you to approve the purchase of 3 school buses, 2 54-seaters, and 1 van. The 54-seaters together cost about $165,000. The van costs about $62,000. Number 12, which can be found on page 3, we're asking you to approve those salt spreaders that Mr. Comensberger lobbied for so strenuously during budget period at a cost of about $10,000. Number 17, which can be found on pages 3 and 4, that is we're asking you to approve a contract with Rutgers Behavioral Health. And again, they'll be providing behavioral health services to our students at the middle school, as well as at the Samsel Upper Elementary School. Number 19, which can be found on page 4, we're asking you to approve the annual renewal for Apex Learning. And I put this on my report only because the number is wrong. The amount is actually $15,600. So if you don't mind making that correction there, I do apologize for the typo. But again, that renewal is $15,600. Okay. Number 20, which can be found on page 4, we're asking you to approve a contract with New Jersey Teacher to Teachers to provide 52 full days of professional development on Fontes and Pinnell. And that, if you don't know what that is the reading system that we use in kindergarten through 3rd grade, as well as for our balanced literacy instruction that we use in grades 4 through 5. And of course, as Dr. Shediak has pointed out, particularly during budget period, that is all funded by Title II. You can find that on page 4. Number 21, which can also be found on page 4, we're asking you to reject 2 single route busing bids that we received. They are for single routes at the Samsel Upper Elementary School. And if you don't recall, the reasons why we purchased those 2 new buses is so that we can do those routes ourselves rather than contract out with them. So we are officially asking you to reject those bids. Number 22, which can be found on pages 4 and 5, we're asking you to approve a purchase professional services contract with CME Associates, which is our engineer, to provide us with an extensive report on parking lot expansion at the Samsel Upper Elementary School. You might have heard us speak about this in detail, previously. When we constructed that building, I don't believe we thought hard enough about the amount of buses that would need to transport kids in and out of that school. In fact, every child there is actually bused unless their parent comes to pick them up. Currently, we line the buses all along the driveway, which makes it somewhat of a hazardous dismissal and arrival process. By going ahead and taking the playground area and transforming it into a parking lot / playground area during lunch and recess period, we'll be able to park those buses there in the morning so that we can safely escort our children into the school, as well as in the afternoon where we can safely take them out to the buses, and the buses can leave the school in an orderly fashion. And of course, we're able to do that through some of the new state aid that we received. Number 30, we're asking you to approve the revised renewal rates for prescription coverage provided by CVS Caremark. You can find that on the addendum. We're asking you to approve that, so that is actually going to be a 9% decrease from our rates last year. Numbers 31 through 35, which can be found on the addendum, we're asking you to approve the purchase of band instruments, equipment, and supplies. As you know, with the new state aid, we used about $100,000 to purchase new band instruments, equipment, and so forth, and I have listed there the vendors that we'll be using for those purchases. Are there any questions on finance and infrastructure?
I have questions. For the transfer report, you have 200 and some $1,000 coming out of the health benefits line. This is for the closeout for last year.
Do you happen to know the item number or the date, so I can find it a little bit more quickly?
It's on page 2, on the health benefits line.
Right.
Okay, so there's a decrease of 263. That's for the last year, right? Not this year?
Yeah, it was last
Correct.
year.
So that's in addition to everything else that's in addition to the other transfers you made. So what is the total that was over budgeted last year? This is it, because you had originally said it was about $1 million. Is this in the million, or is this an additional 260,000?
I can look it up. I don't
Okay.
have that number handy at all.
Okay. I have another,
Sure.
should I go on? Well, she's waiting.
You may go on.
Thank you. This one will be a little bit more complicated. Okay. Number
look forward to
30
it.
on the addendum. As you know, when we had great lengthy discussion about this when we set these rates. And it was the Healthcare Committee that unanimously agreed that we should have a 15% decrease, well, at least a 15% decrease in these prescription rates. The Finance Committee didn't agree, and the board didn't agree, so hence we did not decrease those rates. Now I guess the Finance Committee has decided that they want to decrease them 9%, which is still short of the 15% that the Healthcare Committee wanted. To do this without the Health Benefits Committee, to do it without the bargaining units, the reason the Healthcare Committee was created was because of the poor relationship we had in this area with health benefits, which is why that committee was created, with the bargaining units to be part of this process. So now we have 3 people on the Finance Committee, or whoever made this decision, that now, yes, we did put in 2 higher rates, and now we're going to lower it to 9%, as opposed, which is still short of what it probably should be. So, and I remember even discussing, and even, Kevin, I think you brought it up, well, before we do anything, we're going to have a policy, and we're going to meet with the bargaining units, and we're going to meet with the broker, and the committees are going to get together and make a decision how we're going to do this. But yet now, we get it tonight, at the 11th hour, okay, let's just decrease it by 9%. So I don't think it's right that we're doing this without the committee. I don't think it's right that the units don't get to be part of this process, which is what we had started. It seems to be done in a vacuum, and it seems to be handed to us tonight. Why did we get it tonight on an addendum? So I'm going to make a motion that we table this until the Healthcare Committee meets.
Okay, I have a motion to table.
I'll second that motion.
I have a second. A motion to table is non-debatable, so a roll call.
Mr. Balco?
Yes.
Mrs. Batco?
Yes.
Mr. Bashada?
Yes.
Mrs. Bloom?
No.
Mr. Callahan?
No.
Mr. Esposito?
What I'd like, can I ask a question?
It's non-debatable, it's yes or no.
Yes or no?
And if you want to talk about it more, then vote no to table it.
Yeah, I'll talk about it more.
So was that a no?
That's a no?
That's a no.
Ms. Rubio?
No.
Mr. Walsh?
No.
Mr. Syak?
No. Okay, so while we're on the topic, if there's any further discussion regarding the health benefits.
I have something further I'd like to say, too. Mrs. Bloom, are you not on the Finance Committee? And you are conflicted in healthcare. Yet, were you part of this decision were you in that meeting to make this decision?
That the decision came from Ms. Hill.
And were you at the
But wait a
Finance
minute.
meeting
No,
to
no, no, no.
discuss it?
Excuse me, Mrs. Batco. I find it very interesting that when you are on a committee, you want your committee to rule. Committees make recommendations. This committee made a recommendation. The board is here to vote yes or no on the recommendation of the Finance Committee. Mr. Esposito chairs that committee. You chaired Health. You made your recommendation. People chose to differ with that.
Right,
That's
and
what we're all
and it
about. That's
also
why there
is
are
something
9 of
that
us.
you're conflicted on voting on, and yet you choose to vote. Do you not? Is your son not an employee here and a recipient of these health benefits?
Probably.
Yes, and you're conflicted, and yet you sat in that committee meeting twice now. The last time when you made the recommendation not to lower the rates, and now the committee comes back, yes, let's lower the rates, and we'll just
This
throw
is
them.
not an individual decision.
You're
This
right.
is a decision for all employees of this district. And as a former teacher and a former union president, I think I know more about healthcare than you do.
It's not relevant. It's not relevant.
Well,
Are
it's
you
not rele-
conflicted
Excuse
on the
me,
healthcare policies?
Mrs. Batco, please worry about yourself. You'll
No,
have plenty
I am.
to do.
Okay, ladies, let's.
Are you not conflicted in this process? Yes, you are, and yet you choose to vote.
Anything else?
I have a problem with us voting on this tonight without the committee and the bargaining units being a part of the process.
All right, so my thoughts on this, first of all, we do still need a policy. And I spoke to New Jersey school boards. Unfortunately, they don't have any model policies in this area, so we're going to have to write one on our own, which is not an easy policy to write, but nevertheless, we still do need one. But with the new information that we have, the new rebate levels that came in, we now have an opportunity to give more money back to our employees starting in September. Now, Mrs. Batco, maybe you're right. Maybe the number should be 15%. But I don't want to keep more money from our employees if we now have new information that justifies us giving some more back. So from my position, I'd rather vote to start the school year giving back the additional money.
Right, but we didn't get more information. What did you get? Another rebate check that turned out to be more than the last one. That was the only thing.
Yeah, well, but an estimate.
Yeah, right,
No,
so
we got,
even if you
we
use,
got our actuals back
right.
Yeah.
for the entire school year. We didn't have that
We
when we
didn't
made
have
the
that
Yeah,
the
school
what were you
decision.
short, like 2 months, and they ran the same as the last 10 months?
3 months.
Yeah, but it couldn't.
And we got a second rebate check.
We had one
We only had one rebate check at a time.
Right, so now that the
and
numbers
3
went up,
quarters.
why are we only doing 9%? Why aren't we refunding the money then? Why wouldn't you refund the
Because we
money if it's so
discussed-
high?
We discussed as a board, okay, that the first year, we weren't sure which way we were going to go with it. We don't know if these numbers are going to stay true, if they're going to go up or down, okay, over the next year or two. So we played it a little conservative at 5. When we saw that the rebates were higher, we thought it was, proper to give back more than we originally thought, so we want to give 9.
And what happened, Kevin, to the bargaining units being part of this whole thing?
Well,
You
and
even
listen,
said that.
maybe I'm missing something, but we want to give our employees more money back or a discount on their premiums. Are the bargaining units going to come back and say, no, please don't do that?
No, the bargaining units are going to come back and say what happened to the higher number that
did
they
that already.
requested, that they should have
And
been.
again, there's nothing stopping us from in another 3 months revisiting this again and adjusting further if situations warrant.
But you have the whole year now, do you not?
No, we only have 2 rebate checks.
No, we have the whole year premiums done. This
We have
is
we
for
have
the last
premiums
year,
done,
correct?
But there are additional rebate checks that we're waiting for, correct?
There are, and in doing the calculation, I estimated them at 16% because that was what the first two came in at.
We don't have actuals yet.
Mr. Sack,
Yes,
may I interrupt for just a minute?
sure.
I think what the problem here is that Mrs. Batko was pointing out that there was a procedure that wasn't followed. Okay, with the healthcare benefits program and a committee that was established under prior boards, there was an issue that had to be addressed. So they established a healthcare plan, a healthcare committee, and I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Mrs. Batko, I think you're saying that it should have went to the healthcare committee, then went to the finance committee. Am I correct?
Correct, correct. And that was one of the reasons we had the problems, was because this was done this way in the past, and that's how we had such poor relationships with these bargaining units when it came to healthcare.
But how did you come up with the 15%? Didn't you have a healthcare committee meeting to come up with that number?
Yes, we did.
And then we said no.
Right, you
and
said no.
That's it.
Right, so why did you say no, and now all of a sudden it's
Because
good?
I just explained it. Phyllis, I just explained it. We weren't sure where we were going to go. We could have went the total opposite these last 2 months, okay, and tanked and had to charge our teachers more. We weren't quite sure where it is. It's year
You
one.
always knew you were going to get that rebate check.
We didn't know what it was going
We're
to be.
going to
though.
get 4 rebate checks a year. That's not,
Right, but we don't
that's
know what
going to
those
happen.
numbers are going to be. So next year, if we're in line as we are this year, I can certainly, I mean, I can't guarantee it, but I could tell you, I would be all for giving more money back.
Okay, so did
Just
you
not year one.
discuss about returning the money that we overcharged?
No, we're not returning them.
So you made
Well,
a conscious
because we don't
decision not
know.
to return the money?
Because it's a what if. We have 1 year in the books. That's good.
No, no,
That's
no,
not
no,
great.
it's not a what if. You collected money from last year on a prescription plan,
Right.
okay? The actuals came in less than the collections, okay? The year is now closed, correct? June 30th, everything's closed, all the numbers are in. You just said that, the numbers are in. So was there any discussion about refunding the overpayments?
So you want us to go year in and year out and say, okay, this year we're raising you, this year we're decreasing, this year we're raising, this year decreasing. We're not doing that.
No,
It's-
I didn't
it's-
ask that.
but no,
I
so
asked
that's
about
how-
a refunding,
That's
it,
what
not
you're
the
looking to
rebate.
do.
That's what it would come out to.
I mean,
That's how it plays
insurance
out.
is over a longer period of time. You don't clear the account at the end of June, and then next year, go through the year, and if you end up short, go back to the employees on June 15th and say, oh, by the way, we need you to contribute an extra $50 a
But
person
they're
because we're
different,
short.
but they could be different employees, too.
But again, that's insurance. I mean, I'm paying my home insurance now, not just based on Kevin Sayak's experience. I'm basing it on New Jersey manufacturers, cohort of customers, probably over a tail of 15 to 20 years.
Right, but don't you think that this should have been discussed with the people involved in whose money it is? And that was how we had established this in the first place.
The
And yet
concept-
they were all excluded from this process.
The concept behind this was not to exclude anyone. The concept behind this was we are reducing premiums. We wanted to do it before everyone gets back in September. Certainly, we could table this. We can have a discussion. We can make a decision in November. In the meantime, you're going to have more money taken out of people's checks for 2 months.
But you still would lower the rates, it would always be retroactive, but I still think the number is low. I don't agree with the process. We have no policy. You were the one who grandstanded, oh, we have to do this till we get a policy, and then you came across and changed it anyway.
And look, like I said, if the board wants to hold up and tell all the employees you need to keep contributing at a higher level, that's fine. The board can do that until we get a policy, goes through 2 readings, we agree on what the right number is, the right procedure, and maybe we can give them a discount in January or February, if that's what the board's pleasure is.
It was not done properly. And could you please reflect in the minutes that I object to Ms. Bloom being part of this? That she is conflicted from healthcare? I'd like it reflected in the minutes. Thank you.
Any other questions on finance and infrastructure?
Dr. Labby, real quick question on number 23. You have some things there. What's the airfare? Did you calculate that in yet, what it's going to cost for you to travel to California? It's on page 5. Number 23.
I believe that has been calculated in, but I could be wrong. No? Oh, no, not yet.
Also on finance, I need to abstain on the appointment of CME Associates. Anything else under finance?
Did you find the healthcare numbers?
I did. So it came out to 1.8 million for the year.
1.8,
Million,
we over budgeted.
yes.
No, we performed better than budget.
We over budgeted, 1.8 million. So it's additional 8 than from the last time when you had said it was a million.
Any other questions on finance? Dr. Labby, next.
Seeing none, I direct your attention now to student achievement. If you can focus on items 2 and 16. 2 can be found on page 9, 16 can be found in the addendum. We're asking you to approve some new and revised curriculum guides. As you can see, Dr. Shediak, our supervisors and our teachers have been hard at work over the summer writing curriculum. Number 3, which can also be found on page 9, we're asking you to approve the change of a high school course title name from economics to financial literacy in the 21st century. And we'll also be using a new program for that. Numbers 5 and actually 5 through 15, which can be found on pages 9 through 11. We're asking you to approve the co-curricular trips and activities, included but not limited to, as you mentioned earlier, Mr. Sayak, the Sayreville War Memorial High School activities calendar for the 2018-19 school year. Are there any questions for student achievement?
Dr. Labby, on the calendar, are we going to work on the prom dates for next time?
We've asked them, yes, yep, we've communicated that. We're going to do the best we can to push those as far, back into the school year as we can, or so that they're closer to the end of the school year.
Any other questions on student achievement? Next up.
Moving along to governance. Number 2, which can be found on page 11. This is actually a new CUSAC requirement. We're asking you to approve the observation or evaluation rubrics that we use to observe and evaluate our teachers as well as our principals, and including myself. So we're asking you to approve the Charlotte Danielson Framework for Teaching rubric, which we use for all of our certificated instructional staff, excluding our administrators. Our administrators this year, in accordance with the decision made by our District Evaluation Advisory Council, we're going to be using the New Jersey Principal Evaluation for Professional Learning tool. We're also going to use that for our vice principals, our supervisors, and our directors. And then finally, as you know, because you completed my evaluation last year, we are using the new New Jersey School Boards Association Superintendent's Evaluation rubric to evaluate myself. Number 3, on page 11, we're asking you to authorize me to appoint staff necessary for the opening of schools. This is something that we ask you to do annually, but it is contingent upon your retroactive approval during the next scheduled Board of Education meeting. Number 4, we're asking you to approve for first reading. Actually, I'm sorry, I had that wrong on my slide. This is for a second and final reading, the following policies. We went over those at length during the last meeting. Number 5, we're asking you to approve a school security shared services interlocal agreement with the Sayreville Borough to provide Sayreville police officers in all of our schools, including when our school resource officers are not in school. So at all times when our students are present in our schools, there will be an armed Sayreville police officer in them. And finally, number 6, we're asking you to approve this for a first reading. Use of school facilities, we talked at length during our last meeting about, we just went ahead and resurfaced our turf field. We wanted to come up with a policy that reflected who should be on that field and when, and that's why we revised the use of school facilities policy. And then, of course, thanks to Mr. Nasser, we have developed a physical restraint policy and regulation that is in alignment with the new restraint and seclusion law that was passed by the state legislature. Any questions on governance?
Dr. Labby,
Yes.
on the HIB policy, page 9 of 22 pages, this is basically, if I'm correct, verbatim what the state has. Some of it. Page 9 of 22.
Yeah, well, which section are you referring to?
Well,
There's just
at
a
the
lot
bottom
there.
here, at the original investigating report, have harassment, intimidation, and bullying. Okay, you made the changes here. This is verbatim, basically where the state statute is. Okay, but it doesn't go far enough because what happened is per state, verbatim, there's something about, I left the paper at home, but I don't know if anybody else went to the state and found out what it actually has to say. there's an addition, another paragraph in here about a principal having a meeting with both conflicting individuals before or after this is decided that it's not a HIP. There's another paragraph that goes with this, not on the next page, but after that also.
Well,
Mr.
I mean,
Glockenlaw, you, or through Dr. Labby.
in essence, what the new legislation language says is now our principals have the discretion to determine, based upon facts collected, as to whether to launch an HIB investigation or not. However, the parents have the right to appeal
Correct.
if they don't agree with the principal in not launching an investigation. And that is reflected in this policy.
That's on page 10.
Yeah, no, I know, but I think, isn't there something that the principal should meet with the parents? I mean, on the state statute, the way it's written, about the parents meeting with the superintendent, not the superintendent,
I looked
the
up
principal.
that statute too, because I had asked the question at the last meeting, and you replied that the changes were all done based on the state statute. But let me just clarify something. Are you asking that we could do more than investigate them all beyond what the statute says? Is that what you're saying?
Well, excuse me, what I'd like to see is any incidents that reported to have investigated, because, that way we're going to do a thorough and efficient job.
Okay,
I
and is
know
that
that's-
how we did it before? We investigated everything that was reported?
Yes, anytime, because the statute reflected that. Basically, the statute said that anytime anyone said that they were being bullied, harassed, or intimidated, it automatically had to be investigated. And the state legislature changed that and said now the principal has the discretion based upon the facts collected. Here's a perfect example of it. There are cases in which we have code of conduct violations in which a student, for example, punches a child. And sometimes our parents will immediately say, well, my child was being bullied, when there is no factual information at all to substantiate that, and it's just really done in retaliation. And now we have to launch this investigation. And it consumes our HIB specialists. I mean, the amount of investigations that we've done. I'll go even further. There are times when our parents will go ahead and say, well, this parent is bullying my child. And we then have to investigate that. We have no choice at all. And basically, the state legislature heard so many administrators and listened to so many school employees state that we as professional educators should have the discretion based upon the facts that are presented to determine whether to launch the investigation or not. And the state legislature agreed. And that basically is reflected in this policy and regulation. But the state legislature checked that to some degree by saying that when you report to the parent that you're not going to investigate, they have then the right to appeal that.
Right.
And to Mr. Bashada's point, the paragraph now, because now this is making sense, the paragraph that he's referring to is the alternate paragraph that could be in the policy if the board chooses not to exercise the option provided in state law and have all incidents investigated. So it's not an additional paragraph, it's in lieu of. Basically, we're taking out that paragraph and including this language.
Right, but there also was, in that change, there was a sentence that said, "The principal shall hold a separate meeting with the parents or guardians of each student involved in the alleged incident within 7 days of informing them of the alleged incident in order to assist the principal in making the determination." Was that put in this policy? Because it's not directly after this. Is it somewhere else?
No, so if the incident itself is not determined immediately to be HIB, that is not part of this.
Right, but that's not how I read the statute. Like, the part here where you have it in blue, okay, that's what you're saying you copied from the statute. Right, and then on the back, the rest of the blue, you're saying, okay, the principal is making a decision whether we investigate it or not, and saying, like, say if somebody punches someone and it's not, so they're saying, okay, it's not. But in the statute, there also was a sentence that right after where you finished by state statute, there's a sentence that says the principal shall hold a meeting within 7 days with the parents or guardians of each student involved before the determination is made. And that's not in here. At least it's not in the same place, unless you have it somewhere else in these 22 pages, and I didn't see it.
Okay, so
Not in blue.
let me look through, maybe it's towards the end of the reporting section.
And while Kevin's looking for that, just for people who are listening, because people seem to miss this point a lot, when these incidents happen, doesn't mean that that case is not being investigated as a code of conduct violation. It just means we're not investigating it then as a HIB if it doesn't meet any of the criteria right off the bat, whether it was a perceived difference in the person, if there was a power thing. So that doesn't mean the person is not in trouble or there's not an investigation. It just is not a HIB investigation. You could do something that's way worse of a violation that may necessarily not fall under the guidelines of HIB.
Did an attorney do this?
No, this was taken directly from New Jersey School Board's model policy. And no, and I don't believe that was in New Jersey School Board's model policy.
Well, do you want it? I mean, I just printed it off then. Do you want to see
Let
it?
me see what you, yeah, let me see
Yeah,
what you
it's right
have.
on the bottom.
Because if it's just a matter of adding something, we
just
can
the-
certainly do that.
That's the part that I was referring to that I left.
It's on the bottom, where you see
Yeah,
where it's,
I-
that was,
I'm getting there.
Okay.
Shall hold the ceremony, parents or guardians of each student involved in the incident. You know, it does look like it should be included. And, Mr. Glock-Malloy, I'll forward this, I'll pass this over to you as well. It's the bottom section. And it speaks specifically to the preliminary investigation. All right, so while Mr. Glock-Malloy is looking at that, does anybody have any questions about the other policies? If that sentence does need to be included, we can simply amend it on second reading and add it in.
this
That's why
is
we go
second
through two
reading.
readings. Pardon?
This is second reading.
That's what I'm saying. We can amend it, we can
Oh,
add that.
tonight. We can add it
amend
tonight.
it
Okay.
with the additional sentence. So give Mr. Glock-Malloy a second just to take a look at that. Are there any questions on the other policies?
I have another question, but not on the policy.
Okay.
But on
You want to do your other, not related to policy?
not related to the policy, but in that, to governance.
Okay, so you want to
Okay.
do that question then while
right,
Mr.
all right.
Glock-Malloy is looking?
All right. Well, the other thing too, with the healthcare, Erin, if you could mark down that I'll vote yes on the 9% decrease, but with the caveat that I think the number should be higher. Can you put
I
that in
can
there?
mark that in notes.
All right. The other question I have, the New Jersey School Board Superintendent Evaluation, as Kevin knows, I haven't liked it this year. I didn't like it last year. So I don't like that tool. I find it completely redundant. So I'm going to vote no just on that one.
Well, just let me clarify too. You mentioned the previous year. That tool last year was its first year.
Yeah, I didn't like
Different
it
tool
last
the
year,
year
so I
before.
tried it again. I didn't like it again this year. Actually, I found this
No.
year was even more redundant than last year.
But what I'm trying to tell you is there are two different tools. There are two different, the one you used in 2016, 17 to evaluate me is different than the one you used
And I think
last
Mrs.
year.
Bacco saying she didn't like
You didn't
I
like
didn't like
either
either of them. Okay.
Well,
So
you said
I
High
think-
standard to me.
All right, twice I didn't like it, so
you
now
don't like
I
any
don't
of
want
the
to.
evaluation. Well, unfortunately, we can duly note that, but
Right.
that's the only rubric that's out there for me.
Yeah, but we didn't use it before you, so there are other mechanisms. I just found it very cumbersome, it was very long, it was very redundant, and I felt it wasn't, very flexible, let's put it that way.
Dr. Labby,
So-
one year we used the Alaska model, so
So-
I would suggest you just
So-
let this one go.
Yeah, I'm just going to vote no because I didn't like it.
Okay.
Mr. Glock-Malloy, should we proceed and we can come back to this? I'll give you a few minutes.
Yeah, I'm trying to find the most current version
Okay.
right now on the legislator's website.
Okay, sounds good. So any other questions on policy or governance?
Yes, Mr. Syak, number 4 on page 12, does that include the homework policy that was discussed last?
That includes the homework policy, and you can ask your questions because I already spoke to Dr. Shediak, and she's got answers.
Okay.
But you can go ask your questions.
I just wanted to say I disagree with it. I want to ask how, the ruling is we would decrease it by, we would put it to 5%, correct?
Correct. Yes.
I know some, like, students rely on homework for grades. They also, like, people that are in lower level grading, when they move up and they realize, oh, homework doesn't matter as much, homework doesn't do this, then, they go into high school, they go into college, they'll have to kind of balance that. Homework just not gonna disappear. So I feel like making it 5% it makes it almost non-existent. And the other thing about it being with the weekend thing, with nothing being due Monday, I just don't feel like that's gonna help students either, because then everything could just be due Tuesday. It might help them time manage, but, doing it over the weekend, then doing some of it on Monday. But a lot of the students, don't necessarily do that, and I just feel like moving it 10% to 5% is just not the smartest strategy.
When you started off by saying that, the students kind of count on the homework to help them with their grades, that is part of the problem, quite honestly. With homework counting, as it did in the past for 10%, your quarterly exam counts for 15% of your marking period grade. So, we're looking for a balance there. Yes, it's important for students to do homework when it's assigned, but a grading system, and we discussed this at length, and the committee who came up with this was a group of teachers and administrators. It was teachers from every level. From kindergarten, it was music, phys ed teachers. Every department was represented when we worked on both of these policies. And we want grading on the report cards. The grade should reflect how a student is achieving the standards that are set by the state. And homework is not necessarily a way to measure that. We're looking to see how the students are understanding the material. We're still counting homework for 5%. You mentioned about, the homework-free time on the weekends. It doesn't mean that students will not have any homework to do sometimes on the weekends. We wanted to avoid, because we've listened to our parents, and, students get a lot of homework, and they want to have the weekends, if possible, to spend as family time. Students may be assigned something on a Thursday that will be due it can be due on Monday. It doesn't mean that assignments can't be due on Monday, but they can't be assigned on a Friday and due on a Monday. Okay, where specifically it has to be done over a weekend or over a holiday. So that was kind of thinking behind that, and to help the students, quite honestly, with time management, maybe to give them a few days to do it.
I'm all for, I would, as a student, I would like more time away from homework as well. But what I'm saying is, with moving it to 5%, and you said that it doesn't measure as much of the grade that can be reflected through the class, I feel that testing, and even standardized testing like the SAT or the ACT, is just becoming more of, like a standard that, we have to rely on this more, but without the material and the homework to learn it, then those grades aren't going to be as high either. And then that, people are bad test takers. That's why, even as a nationwide thing, everyone, always says the U.S. is kind of lacking behind some of the other countries. Is it maybe because, we do rely on those, we have so much more standardized testing, state testing, all that stuff, than them. So I feel like just homework, 10%, 5%, it does make a big difference to me, and I feel like it could make a big difference to other students.
But should it be graded? Who's doing the homework? How is it being graded? Is it being graded for completion? I mean, there's a whole lot of different factors that go into that, and we certainly we do encourage the teachers not to rely simply on tests and quizzes. Standardized tests do not count within your marking
Yes.
period grade, that's a whole separate category. You know, we want the teachers to do more authentic assessment, more project-based assessments and so on, not just all tests and quizzes. I think probably a good number of you teachers here at the high school assign projects, you know, in the various discipline areas. We've encouraged teachers to use, even for quarterly exams, some project-based assessments. So, you know, we're trying to use a variety of assessments. We just don't think that homework should count for more than 5% of an assessment grade. Homework's important, students should have homework assigned, but, you know, I think we differ a little bit on whether or not it should be, if a student should be graded and how much that grade should count on homework.
The homework does, I guess it could vary on depending on completion. Some teachers could collect it, but that also works on other things such as tests and projects. Depending on the teacher, they could grade it at this level, and you know, another teacher could grade it just on how much you did this better. You know, even that's even being judged by other colleges that are looking at the whole district as a whole and saying that homework doesn't matter as much. Well, with 10%, 5%, it doesn't matter as much. You're going to get the same amount of homework, potentially, but...
Right, we're not saying homework doesn't matter. We are just saying that it's the district's philosophy on grading that homework should not count for more than 5% of the grade.
But
You know,
yes.
What, it's an important part of student learning, but we put a limit on how much it will count for during a marking period.
Yes, every teacher, even every teacher just puts different amount of emphasis on homework, just as every teacher puts different amount of emphasis on tests, quizzes, projects. So I just don't see how 10% to 5% is beneficial to most students. Even I've talked to my friends about this. The weekend thing's not as a big of an issue, but just that the homework thing, you know, some students on the first 2 days when they get the syllabus, they'll see that the numbers changed, and to them it won't really matter, you know. So some especially the students that sometimes don't choose to do homework or anything like that, and that's better because it does give more time for family and fun, even throughout the summer and summer. But I just feel as even a district from kindergarten through 12th grade, how we're not preparing just even the kindergartner that's going to be moving to high school in however many years, preparing them for, you know, the work that they will be given, the how much time and how much effort that it has to go in to just get and raise up these tests. You know, it's not going to just come naturally without actually practicing the skill. And to practice the skill, it should have more of a percentage. And 10%, I feel 10%, that's a good amount.
John, one thing I know, because we've talked about this before, is that there's been a lot of studies regarding the amount of homework and actual learning. And one thing we found, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that a lot of the studies are showing that if you keep giving more homework, it doesn't really reflect in any real learning. So, you know, one thing we've learned is the work that we're actually doing, the classwork in school, has a higher, causal outcome on what you actually learn. So I think what we're saying is we want to reflect more on that. That should be more.
Yeah.
I understand homework is a great way for a student to raise his grade,
Yes.
but remember,
No,
we're not just worried about the student raising his grade, we're worried
No,
about how much they're learning, so when they leave here, they have more knowledge.
No, I agree on that. I feel like the classwork should be more reflective, and it does make the student academically more achievable, because, you know, homework, one worksheet or 4 worksheets, to me, it doesn't really change anything either.
Right.
I just feel that, you know, the percentage is I feel like it's too low for me. And then are we putting more of that 5%, is that going into classwork, in which it should be, since we're trying to reflect it more?
It'll
where
go
is
into
that?
different assessment categories and
To like
within.
more tests, because then just more
Each-
emphasis on tests, I just feel it's the wrong direction.
each department will be deciding how they're going to allocate it.
Yeah,
The
and-
10% was a maximum?
10% was the
Was it-
maximum, as is the 5,
And the
correct?
5
No,
is the maximum?
in the past, it was actually, the previous policy, I believe, read up to 15%, but
Oh, up to 15.
But we had, as a district, we had decided 10% was going to be the max. So, and this is a maximum of 5%.
Is there any concern you have if it's so low that students won't do their homework?
Well, that's one of my points.
Okay.
Like,
All
you know,
right.
I agree to Mr. Walsh's point that homework doesn't really raise, like, you know, you don't want students stressing out getting home from school after 7 hours and doing, you know,
Right,
however
but
much
I don't know,
homework
I
they
think
get.
in math, I
just-
always found that doing the homework at home was quite helpful to
Right.
reinforce what was done in the class, because sometimes when you're by yourself, it makes it a little bit more difficult than when you're sitting in a classroom, so.
Right, and
Do you-
we're
Are
not,
we concerned the students won't take their math homework and do it now, because
No.
it's only 5%?
no.
Well, I think that may be
We're-
Mr. Lewis, or part of Mr. Lewis's.
Right, I know, I
concern.
just wanted to see
no,
if it
no,
came
no,
up
no.
in her.
No, we're not,
the
we're
committee.
really not concerned about that.
Okay.
We really feel that the students will do the homework, and part of the homework policy and a big part of the discussion was that the homework has to be meaningful. You know,
Okay.
there's no need to assign 25 math problems, and, you know, for homework, maybe assign 5 to 10 problems,
And
but
what
make it meaningful.
type of people were on the committee that did this?
It was teachers, it was from kindergarten through 12th grade. It was almost every discipline, you know, we had a music teacher, we had a phys ed teacher, we had from all the different departments. It was very well represented.
Educators.
Right, and
Educators,
there
doing
were
school
some
education.
administrators
Not
on the
us.
committee. I think
Never happens
we
here.
probably had about 25, almost 30 people on the committee and all, and we met about 4 to 5 times during the school year.
Okay, because you mentioned parents, that you listened to them. Were they on this committee too?
No,
or
no, parents were not on this committee, but we've heard parents come here and talk about homework and so on.
And the
the
other
amount
piece
of
too that I
homework.
think we're trying to align, and you made a very articulate argument about the over-reliance on testing, you know, nationwide. Unfortunately, that is a nationwide phenomena, but it's also the way school districts are measured, it's the way students are measured for college. And this also helps us better align, you know, student outcomes and student performance on standardized tests to our grading system, so that what we see happening in our grades in the classroom is aligned to how students are performing on the assessments, such as the SAT, such as the PARCC, et cetera. Whereas if you've got homework over-accounted for in the average, it tends to skew that because students are able to take their time with homework. They're able to get help from someone with their homework. And then when we start looking at student data in certain courses, we'll see a situation where students are performing in the course here, and then when they get the PARCC assessment, they're only performing here. And it's because the PARCC assessment's being done in a very different environment. So what we're trying to do is condition students to be able to perform independently in that type of environment by adjusting the grading system.
I get your point, the first point with how much it's truly measured and how much it affects it, but with the PARCC, I feel like it doesn't really correlate, just because some students, you know, you pass it once, then the grades really don't matter, you know? People, once they pass it, students don't try on it as much.
Okay.
Because, especially for high school, because you only need, that's it, that's the only graduation requirement. So I just don't, I feel like that's just an imperfect comparison.
Okay.
Does this bring us in line with other districts, or most
It-
districts are at 5? or-
Yes, I mean, some districts don't count homework at all.
At all?
At all, yeah, some.
Are there other districts as high as 10 or 15, or
Excuse me?
are there districts like ours that are up to 10 or 15, or
I,
most of them are in 5?
I did not come across any that are that high.
Other comments on any of the
Dr.
policies?
Sediak, does this pertain to all grades, or is this mainly to the upper grades that this policy is going to be referred to?
It's, we have different policies for kindergarten through 5th grade because they use the standard-based grading, so homework is not factored into the grades at all in kindergarten through 5th grade. And then if you read the policy, we have a separate section for grades 6 through 12. So it would be the middle school and high school.
See, I'll make one comment. I graduated from here many years ago, and the homework that was given was to reinforce what you learned in the classroom that day. And it was a continuous process of overlapping what you were taught in the classroom with the homework that was given to you. And I got a darn good education coming from this school, I can say that.
Any other questions on the policies? Do we have a determination yet on the HIB policy?
Mr. Bishada, what you provided us, where did you get this?
That's from the state.
I printed
Where
it.
did you get it?
It doesn't say on the top website.
No.
I think it was the Department of Education website.
No, we
Yeah.
can't find it. There's no Department of Education guidance that says that.
All right.
Is it,
then-
could it be that what you downloaded was a bill?
Perhaps it was an original draft of it looks like a bill, so is that
It
maybe
is.
the
It's-
original
it's-
draft?
It's
and there was
formatted like a bill,
Okay.
so it may not have been approved, but
It could have been linked to me from the Department of Education. Maybe, I'm not sure.
we've looked at all the guidance provided by the Department of Education, including the New Jersey Administrative Code, that is basically the regulation that reflects the statute. And there's nothing mentioned about a meeting with parents within 7 days.
So you think it was taken out?
I think that maybe this was in the original proposal and it was
and then
taken out.
Taken out.
Because it appears to be a bill, and we can't find the actual past legislation.
You don't by any chance have the bill number, do you?
No, I went on the Department of Education website based on what you had said at the last meeting, and it could have linked me there. I
Okay.
don't know exactly, I just clicked it.
Yeah, I
don't know
mean,
where
it's-
it linked me
Okay.
to.
It's still
it was,
the legislation they have up there is still the 2012 legislation with regard to.
No, I checked the date when I did it. It was new. It was 2018. I saw, because I did want to check, because there was I wanted to make sure it was something new that I was looking at.
I mean,
But-
this is something too
Well,
that
you guys must have wanted to both
we
see the
did
site,
receive,
because-
we received guidance
both
from,
had it.
I went to.
Well, and that's the thing, I
That's what
went from
I'm
school
saying.
boards,
And we
but
did
then you're
receive-
going from
Right.
NJ
Well,
administrative code.
and prior to writing the policy, we also, we didn't have the Bush Law Group proof or revise this, but we did get a position from them, and we did get their interpretation of the language changes, and there was nothing mentioned by them either about this meeting within 7 days.
I don't know. I got the impression that Tom was looking for something a little more stringent than this policy. Was that what you were
Well, no,
trying to say? Right?
I think there's two separate issues. There's
Right.
one, is there a legal requirement to have a meeting? And I think the answer to that is no. But then I agree with you, I think Mr. Bishada is looking for basically all HIB complaints to be investigated, which means you're basically rejecting our inclusion of this language in the policy.
Well, basically, yes, but see, if you would insert that a meeting with the parents within 7 days of the plaintiff and the defendant, we'll use that term, I think it would handle it much easier. We wouldn't have to do the investigation, but if you would have the meeting with the parents after a case or an incident is brought up, it can be determined by the principal, let them know the outcome. That's all I'm asking.
Well, it does have to be reported. I think maybe the reason why, if this was in an initial bill and taken out, I think it possibly could have been taken out, because if the principal makes a determination not to conduct an HIB investigation, they have to report that to the parents. And it's at that point that the parents can appeal that decision.
Which is in the policy.
Right. So I don't think it's really necessary to actually have a meeting with them within 7 days. I think you're going to make a determination there, and the parent is going to be informed that, they're going to have the right to appeal that if they choose to.
And is
they
that
get-
done
And
in
maybe
writing?
that appeal is actually
That could
that
be the
appeal process
substitute.
could be meeting with the parents.
Right.
And is that done in writing from the principal to the parents?
It doesn't stipulate that. I've never heard that, but I do know that you have to inform the parent as to whether you're going to go ahead and, do an HIB investigation.
Do you inform both parents from both
Yes,
sides?
you would have to, yeah. Victim
Could
and
we put
an
in there
alleged
that we
perpetrator.
inform them in writing?
Excuse me?
You said it's in here that we inform?
No,
them?
there's nothing
Oh,
in there that
it's
says it
not.
has to be given to them in writing, but they do have to be informed.
Right, but is that in this policy that they're informed?
Yes.
Okay.
Page 11.
Is it a problem to have them be informed in writing, even if it's via email?
If that's what the governance committee wants to do,
How are they typically informed?
It says,
this is the first time we're doing this. So in most cases, if it was a code of conduct violation, and they were investigating it, they would contact the parent and say,
Okay. we
We're
denied
investigating it.
We found an
Right.
HIB does not apply
And
here.
in most cases too, if it's a code of conduct violation, all we can do is basically say, we're investigating, we'll take appropriate action. Because we can't go ahead and then disclose to a parent of a victim what the actual code of conduct violation was, nor can we also say what the discipline was. Because then we'd be violating their Family Education Rights and Privacy Act. So with HIB though, it's different. HIB, you have to inform the parent. And it's not a matter of, not a matter of citing a specific violation. It's either, is it something that we can investigate as HIB or not? And if you do go ahead and determine the person, have committed HIB, then we do have to put that in writing. That does have to be put in writing. So as to whether we go ahead and make that initial determination to investigate, whether that gets put in writing or not, I believe that's probably left up to the individual districts when they develop their individual policies.
So what is your recommendation? Do we want to transmit that in writing, or is the policy sufficient as it is?
I think the policy is sufficient as it is. However, as the superintendent, I can go ahead and instruct our principals to make sure that they inform the parents via email,
Okay.
as well as verbally. Just to,
I think it protects the
document that
principals.
I think that protects the principal too.
Okay. All right, any other questions on the policies? Okay, next. And thank you, Mr. Glock-Malloy, for your prompt research, or impromptu research, I should say. Oh, by the way, one other final comment. I do have to thank Mr. Nastor for his input on the fiscal restraint and seclusion policy. He went through that one with a fine-tooth comb before making recommendations to the governance committee. So, Mr. Nastor, thank you very much for all your work on that.
And that's actually the second policy that he has authored.
That's right, we're not even into
for
that
us,
one yet.
because he did the crisis intervention policy previously that was approved by your folks. Okay, if I can bring your attention now to Vision 2030 personnel. Numbers 1 and 25, we have some bittersweet moments. We have some people that have been with us for a long period of time that sadly for us, they'll be leaving, but very happily for them and their families, they'll be retiring and entering the next chapter of their lives with their families. So I'd first like to begin with Tom Brown. Tom Brown is a remarkable colleague and friend to many, particularly in the Buildings and Grounds Department. He started his career with the Sayreville Board of Education 10 years ago. The role he has played made a huge difference in the workplace for the custodians at the high school due to the fact that Tom is always active, cheerful, productive, and very friendly. And I must say that even after our meetings, Mr. Brown is always here, and he always greets me with a smile as they go ahead and break down the meeting room. These are only a few of the positive qualities that we can use to describe Tom. We will miss his valuable contributions, mainly his summertime work leadership organization skills that were used to get the job done always. He is someone who works with very little supervision. No one can ever replace Tom, and his area upstairs will always be referred to as Tom's area. We are proud to call him a great friend. He is more than just a coworker. We will miss his speakers playing with his favorite band, The Temptations, especially the song My Girl. He is a devoted Cleveland Browns fan. Well, we won't hold that against him, will we? As anyone can see, and he always wore his hat proudly, even when the team lost. We wish Mr. Brown the very best of luck in his next journey, and most importantly, becoming a grandfather to his little girl that he calls Gramps' little girl. So we congratulate Tom on his retirement, and we sincerely thank him for all that he has done for our students and our school district. Staying in Buildings and Grounds, we are also losing another beloved custodian, John Schobert, the lead custodian at the Arleth School. John Schobert, the lead custodian at the Arleth Elementary School, will be retiring on October 31st of this year. He started his career with the Sayreville Board of Education 12 years ago. He has been a team player from the get-go. Mr. Schobert has always jumped in and is always willing to lend a hand where it is needed. He is an excellent lead custodian and is well-liked by students, staff, and most importantly, his colleagues in his department. We wish John well in the next chapter of his life, and nothing less than the absolute very best that life can offer him. And again, to John, we congratulate him on his retirement, and we thank him for the outstanding service that he has provided the Sayreville Public Schools. And then finally, and most recently, we did receive another retirement, a beloved teacher at the Sayreville Middle School, Mr. Timothy Desmond. Today, the Sayreville Board of Education would like to recognize the retirement of Mr. Timothy Desmond. Tim has decided to retire after 33 years of teaching science at the Sayreville Middle School. He has touched all of our lives during his time here, and we are sad to see him go. However, we know he is looking forward to spending more time with his family, as well as the opportunity to travel. In fact, I just saw him the other day, and he truly was looking forward to the opportunity to see parts of this world that he has yet to see. Tim, we wish you the absolute very best in your future travels, and as we did with John and Tom, we cannot thank you enough for the outstanding service, the dedication, the commitment that you've made to our students and our school district. Moving along to numbers 7 and 8, as well as 28 and 29, that can be found on pages 14 and 16 and the addendum. We're asking you to approve to hire new certificated and new non-certificated staff for the 2018-19 school year. Number 16, as well as numbers 33 and 34, we're asking you to approve the transfer of 2 teachers as well as a campus security monitor. You can find that on page 18. Number 17, which can also be found on page 18, we're asking you to approve the school personnel designated to be the anti-bullying specialists for the 2018-19 school year. And finally, number 18, we're asking you to approve the transportation department assignments for the 2018-19 school year, as well as the paraprofessional assignments for the 2018-19 school year.
Any comments on personnel?
Can I say a few words here about Tim?
Sure.
Tim Desmond is a remarkable man. He loves science, which always blows my mind. But when I was president of the Education Association, Tim was my grievance chairperson. And in that time, I believe we filed 4 grievances, all of which we won. Not because Tim was great, but because we were doing the right thing. But Tim was great and knew exactly how to handle himself in every situation. And I know the middle school will miss him, and I will miss him.
Other comments under personnel?
I have a comment.
Mr.
Question.
Bishada?
On page 5 of the addendum, Donald Hill, new position, groundskeeper custodian. Why is he being hired at step 5, where normally we bring people in at the lowest step?
I don't know if we can
I know the
comment.
answer.
Well,
It's a contract. He's an existing employee.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
He's an existing employee, and that's the wording in the contract.
Oh, so he works in another department here, or?
yes.
He was a custodian.
Custodian.
Okay, so he's moving from custodial to
Yes.
ground.
So he's not a new employee, he's a transfer.
He's not a new,
Or
He's
promotion,
not-
actually.
Right,
Kind
it's
of
a
promotion.
transfer, really.
okay.
But beyond that, we really can't talk too much
Yeah.
about that, yes.
All right, thank you.
I have a question. I noticed the nurse, how many people do we get to apply for those jobs? I noticed that that's also coming in at a high dollar amount, the nurse.
Not many, very difficult to find.
So how many people do we get in it to apply for something like that?
Dr. Agles, do you know how many people applied for the nursing vacancy?
We had a number that applied, but we had to turn some of them down to get on the right list. And we tried to emergency certify some, but again, same thing, they don't have the right credentials.
So we looked at, could we hire a registered nurse? But it clearly states in the regulations that the only way we could do that in a separate school is if that school was on the same campus as another school. For instance, we're able to have an RN at Samsel for the preschool because we have a certified school nurse on the campus. So with regard to Eisenhower, that's a school in itself. It's not a campus. So we couldn't have a school nurse supervising that person. So we need a certified school nurse for that school. And there are very few out there.
Is the credentials are different than?
Yes, yep. You need actually instruction courses because they actually teach at times. They teach various lessons. So that's basically the difference between a registered nurse certificate and a certified school nurse. There are education classes that you take.
Okay, and what about the student assistance counselor? Why is that step D?
That's using years of experience, but that too was very, very difficult to find. There are very few people certified to be school student assistance coordinators.
So that's a different certificate
Yes,
in itself?
yep.
Any other questions on personnel? I'd also like to acknowledge Tom and John, who are retiring. Your comment about Tom's smile, absolutely appropriate. Every time I saw him, he had a smile on his face. John as well, dedicated custodian and a job certainly that is not an easy job at either school in the district. I also do want to recognize Mr. Desmond at the middle school upon his retirement. Great science teacher, longtime employee, 33 years. Certainly dedicated to public education, certainly dedicated also, Mrs. Bloom mentioned about his work with the SEA, very dedicated to the SEA. In fact, the only time I think he was ever really, really mad at me is when I went to meet with Secretary DeVos, and I had a picture taken with Secretary DeVos, and I posted it on Facebook, and I could have used Mr. Nastor's restraint and seclusion policy the next time I saw him, because he was very upset that I posted that photo on Facebook with the Education Secretary. But Mr. Desmond will certainly be missed and has been an asset to our district as a teacher. Anything else on personnel or the superintendent's report before I open to public on agenda items only?
I just want for page 5, the new position, Assistant Director of Food Services. I did vote against creating that job. I don't think we need another director, so I'm going to vote no on that.
Okay.
Any other comments on the superintendent's report before I open to public? Okay, we're going to open up to public on agenda items only, so just on the items that we've discussed. There'll be another public for any item concerning the district shortly. If you wish to speak on agenda items, please come to the microphone. Okay, hearing none, we'll close public, and we'll take a motion to approve the superintendent's report.
So moved.
By Mrs. Bloom, do I have a second?
Second.
By Mr. Walsh. Any comments? Hearing none, roll call.
Mr. Balco?
Okay. A number 23, page 5. I just want to vote no at this time because I don't know the total cost because of the airfare not being in there.
Okay.
Now, A number 30, I'm going to vote yes on, but I want to note that I would like to see a greater decrease than the 9%.
Okay.
D number 19, page 20, that's the paraprofessionals. I have to abstain on Amy Lembo. D number 29, I'm going to vote no on the Assistant Director of Food Services.
Okay.
And yes on all other items.
Mrs. Bacco?
Yes, except as noted.
Mr. Bishada?
Page 5 on the regular addendum, number 23, I'll be voting no because, like Mr. Balca brought up, final cost we don't know. On number 30, on the addendum, page 1, I'll be abstaining on that because I believe that we should have done it differently than what it was done. On, let me just get my numbers here. On page 5 of the addendum, on the Assistant Food Director, I voted no on this job. And the reason I voted no on this job, because when the prior person was in charge, we instituted cafeteria managers as what this position actually is, to help the director of the food services do her job, and I'll be voting no on this.
Is that all?
That's all.
Mrs. Bloom?
Yes.
Mr. Callahan?
Yes.
Mr. Esposito?
Yes.
Ms. Rubio?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mr. Syak?
Yes, with the abstention noted on CME. Okay, moving forward, any committees meet between
If I
the
may.
last meeting? Yes.
If I may. We have little ones out there, and I have two pretty long ones, and there's going to be some discussion, so if we can go a little out of order.
If
Would
the
you
board,
mind
if the
terribly
board's
if we
okay
went out
with
of order?
Yeah,
with that?
let's get them. They've been waiting
Yeah.
patiently.
I'm okay.
Okay, so we'll let the children
That's
speak.
long enough.
You can take me with you if you like.
No, if anyone from your group wants to come up and address the board?
Just go
Just give us your name and address for the record, and then you got the floor.
Speak loudly into
Is
the
this
mic.
okay? Can you
Yeah.
hear me? That's fine?
I think so, yep.
All right. Brian Keegan, 16 Dunlap Drive. First, I want to thank you guys for hearing us out and everything. As you all know, we're a softball team. We're a travel softball team, Sayreville Blue Bombers. Our colors are Columbia blue, navy blue. Logo, we don't use a logo, okay? One time we used a logo was to attract tryouts, and we used a baseball bat and a softball bat. No jet or bomb or anything like that, or, you know. We do have an LLC that we did in February of this year, a tax ID number, so the government does recognize us. We are the only softball travel program in town, all right? There is 2 rec programs, AA and Little League, as you all know, but we are the only travel team, not only in this town, but in this area. There's none in Perth Amboy, South Amboy, South River, Old Bridge, we are the only one. We know the Junior Bombers and I believe the Sayreville Rec also used the logo. I don't know why you guys are giving 8, 9, 10-year-old girls a hard time about using the name Blue Bombers. You know, I've been coaching a lot of these girls since they were 7. I teach them to be strong girls, strong women, and stand up what you believe in is right. That's what we are doing, and we're going to continue to do, to fight for them. My coaches want to say anything?
Yeah, we think this whole thing is foolish unless the board can bring something up to us that can say why they want us to change our name and why we can't use certain things. We're just doing this for our local girls. We don't turn anybody away. We don't try to steal anybody from other leagues. We're just doing it for the girls. And these girls are being all fed up to this high school. And that's what we wanted to say. And we don't think that we should have to change our Sayreville Blue Bombers name. Okay, we have no logo. It's just a name. And that's it. Thank you for your time.
And is one of the young ladies wearing a shirt with the, you know, that, with, just so we can see what it looks like?
Something.
If you could show us what that looks like?
The championship shirt, they won the championship in their first year.
Okay.
Is that your shirt?
All right, this is a matter of attorney-client privilege. We've got to talk to our attorney about this, so we're not going to really comment in public. We will take what you said under advisement. Thank you for showing us the shirt. That is helpful. I can give you just some general background so you understand why, you know, we have the concern that we do. First of all, years ago, one of the football teams in town, the rec football teams, did approach us about using the Bomber name, and at that time we said no because there were 2 individual programs, and we weren't going to favor one over the other. When the 2 of them merged together, it was the only rec football program in town, and that's why we permitted the use of Junior Bombers with them, and we've got a close working relationship with the team. As other groups go out and start using the name, we don't have any control over those groups, and if we, because it's trademarked, if we don't take a position to either grant permission or refuse permission, we then lose the ability to basically determine which groups can use the Bomber name and which groups can't. So if we don't take a stand and you end up with, 3 or 4 different groups in town, all unsanctioned by the board, using the name Bombers, if someone wants to go out and use Bombers to sell, merchandise or make a profit off of it, we don't then have a legal standing to stop them. Likewise, if there's another group that forms tomorrow, let's say that's the Gray Bombers, and for whatever reason something happens within that team that is problematic, now it reflects on the Blue Bombers, it reflects on us, it reflects on the Junior Bombers, and it creates conflict and confusion. So that's why we've got the concern. But like I said, we'll take into account what you said at our next executive session, which will be in September, and we'll get back to you.
Mr. Syak?
Yes.
Just one quick question. Your LLC, could you give that to me again? It's the Blue Bombers?
Sayreville Blue Bombers.
Sayreville Blue Bombers
Blue Bombers.
LLC. Thank you.
LLC, yes.
And I just, without getting, like Kevin said, we're not going to comment on it, but first off, I want to mention that you girls are very lucky to have a coach like Mr. Keegan. He's I grew up with him. He's one of the great guys in town, and he is true when he talks about he wants to work for the girls in town. But I would like to, I thought Coach brought up a nice point too. Just for this talking hypotheticals, when we hear travel team, we think, hey, that could be a team with a bunch of girls from Woodbridge using the Bomber name. And I'm glad you clarified that it's Sayreville girls and that it's something that you're looking to do, to girls, to help our program. But understand, just like Kevin said, there are some legitimate concerns when it comes to, hey, what do you mean by travel team? Are they a team that, takes girls from out of town? Is it advertised out of town? Because that clearly wouldn't be, something like Bombers. But we can't go, like Kevin said, we can't really go further into it. But I thought you brought up some good points tonight, and you present yourself well. And congratulations on your championship, girls. That's a good thing.
And I guess, yes, congratulations on the championship. One other question for you. If another group in town, unaffiliated with the board, decided they wanted to be the Gray Bombers, or, whatever, does that create a problem for you? For your organization? If another, let's call it another travel softball team, they want to form, a name with something with the Bombers. Does that create a problem for you?
Play softball, we'll play.
Okay.
Is every single girl on your team from Sayreville?
Yes.
No exceptions? Okay.
Just, and again, we're blind to some of these issues sometimes. And, you heard all the boring stuff we were talking about today. That's because we're a Board of Education, not a Board of Recreation. So a lot of times we have hard times making decisions with stuff that comes outside of us. And we know sometimes things are driven from forces outside of us that, but the information you give us tonight, I think will be helpful.
We do, I just want to clarify, we do have one girl that did move. She just moved to Wall, and she still plays on our team.
Right, but she was originally from Sarah. Okay.
Okay. Thank you very much. And again,
Thank you.
ladies, congratulations on your championship.
Great job, great job.
You're welcome to stay for the rest of the meeting.
What'd they do wrong?
My name is Audra Zapatizny. My daughter Danielle's on the team, so I figured this would be. Is there a procedure that our coaches can go through to get approval? Like you said, when the two football organizations joined, they submitted to the board to be approved to use the name Bombers. Is there something we can be doing now to keep our name? Like, they're proud of themselves. They're proud of what they've done. They're proud of what they're learning. They're proud of where they live. Megan loves it so much, she's not leaving. So is there something that we can do to?
At this point, I don't think there's anything right now that we require. I mean, ideally, before you formed, a letter just requesting use of the name would have been the best course. But at this point, we know you exist. We know we've got to render a decision. Dr. Labby, I don't think we need anything formal, correct?
No.
Okay. But if we do, we will certainly reach out to you.
And I know Coach Keegan has met with Dr. Labby, and I know they had some really good conversations. Again, Dr. Labby works at, our discretion too. We have to give him some direction on where to go. But, and again, barring a time machine and going back and asking, I think tonight, given some of the information that we now have, will be helpful.
Our problem really is just how do we reconcile this legally and keep it clean going forward? It's not really about, we don't want you guys to, be formed or have the name. It's nothing personal. We just got to make sure that we.
I understand that, but like, for example, my son played on a team last fall that was called the Sayreville Bomb Squad, and he wore a blue and gray uniform, and he had literally the high school logo, and no one cared. And all of a sudden, it's girls, and somebody cares.
I can assure you it has nothing to do with boys versus girls. I also wasn't aware there was a team named the Bomb Squad. And I'm not, we'd have to run that name by legal counsel. I don't know if that would be a trademark infringement or not.
Well, definitely using
Well,
our
certainly don't get those
our
ones
S-plane
out.
would be.
Our S-plane would be, because that is trademarked.
Yeah, well, I didn't mean to get anybody, I'm just saying, like, it seems.
Yeah, and are they still in existence?
And we'll need to know a name and an address.
Because like I said, this is not about all of you. This is about an intellectual property, right that we have,
No, I
we have
understand
trademarked.
that, but that's where, like, for me, I don't even know if any of the girls from softball realize that. Like, there was another team that it wasn't an issue for, and then it's an issue now.
Only because we weren't aware of it. But, thank you. Anyone else on this matter? All right. And again, you're welcome to stay, but if you leave, we certainly understand.
No, you don't want to stay?
All right, Mr. Esposito, anything to report?
Yeah. Let's go. I will be quick, as quick as I can be. Hold on, let me get my notes together if I may. Okay, so let's start with security, okay? Just very quickly, we discussed the vestibules that are going to be built in the middle school, high school, and the UES. So what happened was original drawings were submitted, and then I believe you guys met with the principals, is that correct?
We did.
Came up and tweaked things, sent it back to the architects, and they're going to send us back another rendering?
Well, the architects joined us.
Yes, they did.
They took
Part of
notes.
the meeting,
Yeah,
okay.
they were part of it.
So whatever, couple of weeks, we'll have, I guess, new drawings, whatever the time frame is.
As well as estimates.
Okay, and that's when you'll present it to security, or are we going to go right to the board? I think we can go right to the board if it's okay with everyone.
Well, we got to, I mean, I think we have to be a little bit careful about showing designs and so forth.
Okay.
But we'll definitely be able to share, particularly the costs
Okay.
of doing everything.
Other items that were discussed, we discussed police radios, enhancing a few that we currently use. We were going to give the principals, and I believe Dr. Labby wanted one, a radio that goes directly to police headquarters. They're $4,600 apiece. The police thought they were extremely necessary and going to be useful and would help, as well as our administrative team. So I think there's how many did we want? 9? I forgot the number. to be
No,
honest
more
with
than that.
We had discussed varying options.
you. Okay.
I mean, just a little bit of background information on those. Currently, we do have radios that communicate directly with the police department. But those are basically one-way radios. What we would like are radios where our principals don't have to carry 2 separate radios on them. One that would go to the police and one that would go within the building. So we would like 2-way radios that communicate with the police, and, Mr. Glock Malloy has worked that out from a technology standpoint, in which, if you can conceive it, a principal would be able to, with this radio, not only communicate on the same channel as the police, but then communicate on the channel with me, communicate on the channel with Mr. Comensberger, and so forth, just with the click of their radio, as well as people within their building. So it would really enhance the way we can very quickly communicate, particularly during a period of crisis, with not only the people within a building, but the police department and the people in the district.
So Mr. Glock Malloy is also working diligently on trying to implement ID swipe cards for our students. Our target date is January 9th, 2019. And I guess, on a high overview level, we're looking at kids swiping in the morning, going through a metal detector to make sure that no weapons enter our facility. And we'll have a report of who's in our classes, so if we ever have to exit the building for an emergency, we'll also know if anybody is present or not present. We'll have a listing of all the kids that are in that day.
And that'll, if you don't mind me keep jumping in
please.
here, Anthony, and that'll coincide as well with staff members. So this is going to be a system in which everyone entering that school will swipe in, and we'll be able to determine who belongs in that school and who does not. And I think that's really important. You look at some of the incidences that have occurred nationwide. People get in because they're posing to be a staff member, or they're posing to be a student. This way, you can't get in without an ID, and when you swipe, it's going to register as to who you are and whether you belong in that building or not.
Right. So when picture this, so you'll have campus security monitors looking at the kids, the students walking in, and it'll be a green light will flash, or on a screen, it'll have their picture, information, and a green light. They're fine. If a child is on suspension or shouldn't be in school that day, it'll be a red light. So instantaneously, to that effect, right, instantaneously, they'll know that a student doesn't belong there, and appropriate actions will be taken. So that's a work in progress, and we'll report on that as we get more information. We spoke to Mr. Glahusky on the middle school. No longer will our middle school students be congregating in the outside before school starts. If anyone has children or have seen that, I don't know how many children we have in the middle school, but it's a heck of a lot of kids out there. So for their own safety, we're going to bring them inside. I'm not quite sure if Mr. Glusky shared any information as to what he's going to be doing once they're inside or where they're going to be. And we
Probably
don't
not
wanna know
appropriate that we share that in public.
Yeah,
anyways.
I don't want to know it.
They will not be outside, though.
He'll communicate that with Dr. Labby. Our CSMs will go through their annual training program. Detective Sprague, I believe he volunteers his time for that, doesn't he?
I
We
believe
pay
so,
him? I
yeah.
think he volunteers his time. It's 2 days' worth of training. So that'll take place when the staff is during the first couple days of, before school starts. So with all this new security, we have to have a procedural manual to keep everything in place. And what we're looking to do is hire that director of security in January. And we thought it was a good time for that person, he or she, to kind of construct a manual of procedures on if something happens or when something happens, who's in charge? Is it the police officer? Is it the CSM? So he's going to take care of that as well as create the drills that we're supposed to run, when we run them, and the new drills that are coming out. He'll keep abreast of all the new information that's out there and write that and keep that manual for us and keep updating that manual. And lastly, under signs, I think we spoke about that in Dr. Labby's report. But we're doing permits, we're putting permit signs on our sports stadium, letting people know that, without permission, without permits, you're not allowed on the field, so on and so forth. We're going to get, signs to look at and approve. I don't know when Detective Sprague's going to get that, next week or so. He said it was a pretty quick process, and we'll share that with you. And Detective Sprague is also going to be putting the drug-free zones, what is it called? The
Drug-free schools.
drug-free school zone, on, I think there's a couple schools that are missing those signs, not all.
And I've been told that those signs are ready, so
They're ready to go?
they're going to let us know
Okay.
if we can go pick them up.
Good, so we're going to put them on, we're going to affix them to the walls of the school, And-
They'll be posted
That's it.
in the school area.
school area, okay. And that's all I have. I don't know if anybody has any questions about security at this point? Did I miss anything? We're good
No, good.
for the most part? Okay. Finance, let's go right there. 1 second, okay. All right. It's a lot. When you color coordinate, there's a lot. Okay. So we'll go into the infrastructure part. The turf field, as everyone knows, it looks amazing out there. So it was brought to our attention that in the middle of our logo, there happened to be red and yellow, I don't know what pieces.
A line and a circle
line.
for
Right,
soccer.
Right, soccer and field hockey.
Well, and the red is for field hockey.
Red is for field hockey.
Right. So people brought that to our attention. We spoke to the administrators, and I believe, Aaron, you took care of that. They're going to be replacing the yellow and the red with gray, and
Yeah, they're gonna remove the line that's red.
Yeah.
And replace the yellow circle with a gray circle.
Is that already set in stone?
We could probably change it, I don't think they've done it yet.
Would it be
so-
possible, because there's a big portion of that yellow is actually white. Could we make that dot white?
I would think so.
Because it would blend in with the white in the logo.
I think we could do that.
Cool.
We just have to make sure it's clearly noted that that's the center of the field for soccer and field hockey, which is why it was there. So as long as it's clearly marked, I think that should be okay. I'll have to check with Ms. Badami.
Okay.
all right, great.
So our last superintendent was colorblind, so we really appreciate your added talent that you bring to this position.
Okay, so.
You've set the bar high for me.
There's many other reasons, that's just one of a multitude.
Thank you.
No, it's because you can see colors.
So with our beautiful new field, we have to maintain it. And in doing so, we need what's called this rake, okay? And of course, the rake we had for our old field isn't conducive or doesn't work for the new turf. So we had to buy a new one for about $2,200. We spoke about the parking for the buses. We're looking, early next spring, sometime, I guess, in the summer 2019 for completion. And we spoke about it, Dr. Labby spoke about it, it's $25,000 CME is charging to put all the information together and all the engineering and specs. As far as the track, CME has recommended that we have a company come in and uncover the cause of these reoccurring sinkholes, okay? According to the CME, they think that'll avoid any delays when we actually fix the track in 2019. So more to come on that. Security vestibules we spoke about. I won't go into any more detail with that. Right? Okay, high school, water heaters. 2 water heaters are in need of replacement according to James. Mr. Coleman'sberger said it's going to be about $19,000 to replace each one. And it's going to be replaced, the first one's going to be replaced immediately, and the second one, we're going to look to see if we can get funds through the maintenance reserve once our audit is complete. Okay? The SUES, not to leave them out, their water heater piping is on the fritz. I don't know what this is exactly, so I'm going to read it verbatim. The supply and return and mixing valve of the piping for the water heater needs to be replaced. Again, Mr. Coleman'sberger has gotten a couple quotes. It looks like it's ballpark, it's around $8,000 to fix that. The SUES staying there. There's a membrane that goes around the roof. It's like a ribbon. That's coming off. Okay, so we have to put it back on, obviously, and it's under warranty, so the insurance company is picking it up. That will cost us nothing. No, what is it called? Deductible? Nothing?
No, not on the
Great.
warranty.
If we all remember the woman who was here about the poison ivy and the tree, so we had an expert out there, and we have to take the tree down, okay? And unfortunately, there's poison ivy all over the place. So the tree is going to cost us $2,300 to come down. We're doing that on September 7th. And to spray the area for the poison ivy, it's another $500.
And I believe they sprayed today.
Oh, they did it today already? Good. So Slover Building. So anyone who's ever been in the Slover Building on the stands, I don't have to go into any detail. It's in shambles. There's so many things that need to be taken care of. Dr. Labby almost waved the white flag last meeting and said, look, why don't we just wait until we get the assessment from our architects to see what in fact needs to be done. And then we have to make determinations as to what we're going to do, whether we're going to fix them piecemeal, or someday soon we're discussing perhaps building a new school, and that might be part of the building. So we're going to wait to when is it? When are they going to send that to us when it's complete, or are they going to give it to us like the field's done here, this building's done?
No, it'll be when it's totally complete.
Do we have a timeline on that?
So one of the things that held them up this summer was the way we do our cleaning. What part of their process is they go around with a camera and they go through the whole building, so you can click through their camera and walk the building within this process. So when we were cleaning in one section, they couldn't skip that because it has to be continuous.
Okay.
So they're finishing up now. I don't know if Jim knows if we have a date of completion. But I know now that our cleaning's pretty much done. They're back in the buildings, and there was not much left to do.
Okay.
So I'm hoping very soon.
Great. So we'll move over to finance for a little bit. Food services. It looks like we took in about $150,000 for last school year, okay? And just to give, in case anyone's listening and for anyone here, you may or may not know, any monies that are generated from food services has to stay within food services. So, and on that note, there's some equipment that needs to be repaired. We have a broken oven, I'm told it's from 1968, so it'll be about $2,000 to repair or $3,600 to replace. And Jimmy's crew is going to put that in, so it won't cost us anything to install. So we thought as a finance committee it was much more prudent to put in a new oven. Okay, so I believe Mrs. Brown, I think we just, right, Mrs. Brown's going to give us a list of other items that need to be replaced
Yeah, she's
throughout the
working
district?
on that, and she's gonna, once all the staff is back in, she wants to get their input too.
Okay, terrific. So we'll look for that sometime in October?
September or October.
September? Okay, great.
Yeah.
We know about the band instruments. Thanks to, Mr. Caruso and whoever helped him look into this equipment that he was going to buy. We gave him $100,000. He was able to get everything on his list for $80,000. So he's going to buy $20,000 worth of additional equipment that he never thought he'd have. Just want to let you know that they are, I don't know if they can thank us enough. They were extremely happy not to be forgotten. They feel like they're forgotten, when it comes to sports and band. And so they're very, very happy and thankful. So they wanted me to pass that along to you. School buses. So we know we have 2 new buses, 54 passengers each. What do we do here? Sorry. Oh, what we'd like to do, Ms. Hill wants to know if we can buy another minibus, okay? We don't have any spare minis, and we need to rent them on a frequent basis, and it's because our buses break down due to the fact that they're older. So, and there's an influx of these preschool students that are coming in, so it might be prudent for us to just buy a bus, okay? So we want your input on that, obviously, this evening, if you want to let us go ahead and do that. It looks like there's going to be funds left over on some of the contracted service lines, so we'll be using that money, I guess, to fund the minibus.
Yeah, and that was actually on the addendum tonight, that minibus.
Okay, we talked about the prescription funds, I won't go into that. And lastly, the staff accounting position, I don't know if you want to discuss that, your need for that. I mean, I could read it, but the staff accountant?
Yeah, so in the business office, we have a lot more things going on now than have been going on in the past. We did add a different position in my office, but we also eliminated another position, so we don't have any additional people. The preschool program between IPSP, Little Stars, and then also with Camp Excel and Summer Enrichment, we're creating a lot more revenue in that area. Every year, our revenue is going up. And I think, I don't have it in front of me, I think I provided it in the summary. That
The
one
net
year-
profit,
I'm sorry?
290. The net profit you're looking for?
Actually, I was gonna go based on the percentages.
Okay.
You know, the one year we went up like 120%,
Yep.
another year 100%, and then another like 60, and then 40%.
Right.
So we're really every year increasing our revenue pretty considerably, and we end up putting that back in the general fund. So with what we ended this past year with, we're looking at increasing from, we had budgeted, I want to say, $210,000 in the 18-19 budget. For 19-20, we'll be able to put in $290,000. It's becoming very cumbersome in my department. It's really something that, between billing and collections, it's something that somebody could be spending a lot more time doing. And it's hard to get everything else done. So that's one of the big focuses. We also now have self-insured prescription, which is all handled in my office, as well as self-insured dental we just started this year. And there has been talks of doing self-insured medical. So all of that is a lot more analytical in nature than we've had in the past. So having an additional person would be very helpful to do that.
Yeah, and just to go a little bit further with that, I mean, with everything that's going on now in our business office, and you can throw into that, you know, the additional revenue that we're getting from advertising and so forth, every one of those things pulls Erin away from purchase orders and so forth. We have a ton of contracts on a monthly period that she has to read very closely, sometimes with the assistance of our attorney, sometimes not. We have purchase orders that require a lot of paperwork to back them up, and it takes someone to look at those and examine those and review those, you know, very closely. It's taking our business administrator, she's being consumed by the day-to-day of doing those things. Whereas, you know, with this new position, she would not be consumed by the day-to-day. I think that would be very important for us, especially as we're moving forward in terms of looking at what directions that we want to go in as a school district.
And did the Finance Committee discuss this and reach a conclusion, or where?
No, we were just discussing it.
It was just a discussion.
Okay.
That's really what it was. Do we give the salary? We're not going to give the salary, I guess.
So the Finance Committee doesn't have a recommendation yet, it's still with Finance.
Well, look, Chris and Lucy can speak up, okay? I'll just start it off. It sounds as though she's being inundated with day-to-day work, and if all these other programs we're making a lot of money, and, you know, we can put some of that money towards someone who can help out and assist, I mean, it just makes sense to me. I mean, why, I mean, with Erin doing these tasks, okay, are costing the district a whole hell of a lot more money than having someone, you know, a staff accountant doing it. You know what I mean?
Let me ask this question. If so much of this, I know you mentioned the health benefits, the prescription and dental piece, but a lot of it's related to our enterprise fund and the revenue that we're generating from our different items. Can this be charged against our enterprise fund as an administrative cost to?
So it could be charged to, directly to the Little Stars program and the IPSP, but at that point, we have to really divvy up the person's responsibilities more accurately between those, whereas if we keep it in the general fund and we use those funds every year to just add the money back in the general fund, it's the same effect. So like this year, we're putting another $80,000 in the next school year into the general fund.
Right.
So this would fund that and really have a net effect of zero.
And the only reason I was asking, I mean, as future boards go on, if this position is being added because of the revenue piece, obviously if the revenue starts dropping off, this position should go away, and if it's in the general fund, it doesn't then correlate with the revenue.
Right, and I would also add that it wouldn't specifically just be for the enterprise funds. So it would also be for the internal service funds, which are the self-insured programs. So it's for things like that as well.
Well, we're definitely not going to charge it to the self-insured programs.
But we have to also understand that there is a cost to
Oh,
running those
I
programs in-house.
fully get it, but it's definitely not going to be charged to the insurance programs. Yes.
With a simple job description, to your point,
Yeah.
let's say half her time is spent on those other items. Could we offset half of the money, or is it just not worth it?
We could do that, and in doing so, then it would just, when we look at the amount of money that we're depositing in the general fund, it would have an impact on that.
Okay.
Look, I think you come up with a job description and run it by finance and run it by personnel through the process, and then the board can consider it. Okay?
But
Mr. Sayak, I have a couple questions for
Sure.
finance. Mr. Esposito, you mentioned about an architect coming in a future redesigning or whatever going on with Slover. I brought this up before, I believe in this budget here, there's a new boiler being installed in the future for the second boiler in Slover. Am I correct?
Well, it's on its last leg, so.
It's
Right,
not
so
in the
if
budget.
It's not in the budget.
It's in the reserve account.
It's in a reserve
Yeah.
account.
It's been in the
okay.
reserve account
been in
for
the
the past
Couple
3
years,
years.
right?
Okay, but
And we haven't used it because it hasn't failed.
Right, but the point that I'm making, if you're going to tear that building down or whatever you're going to do to that building, and you're going to put a boiler in, what's the purpose of putting the boiler in if you're going to renovate it
That's why we
differently or knock it
Well,
down?
and we agree, but if the boiler goes down, Tom, we have to replace it.
Okay,
Right,
but
so-
is it
I
a
mean-
possibility of reusing that boiler in a new construction?
It could be, I mean, I'm not sure, that would be a
See, that's
question
something
that
to look
Jimmy would have to answer, but listen, right now, there is no alternative to Sillover.
Oh, I
So if the
understand.
boiler goes down, we need to keep people warm
I
in that
understand,
building.
I understand, but I'm just thinking ahead.
I know.
The other question I have with finance, Mr. Esposito mentioned about the school buses. Now, they just signed a law, Murphy signed a law with the three-point harnesses in all school buses. First of all the new buses have to be fit, so the ones that we're purchasing, is that going to add a cost to the purchasing of the new buses if the installation with the three-point harnesses?
From my conversations with the sales rep at Truck King, I don't believe they're going to charge us.
Okay, then the second part of this question, the buses that are in operating order right now within the district, are they going to have to be retrofitted with these three-point belts?
I have not yet gotten guidance on it, so that's something that we are looking into. I don't have an answer for you right now, though.
All right, thank you.
I think what Murphy said was moving forward, they were going to require the three-point, and I also believe what he said was that any new buses manufactured or built would have to have the three-point.
So
So
these
if
new
the
ones that are
buses that we bought are already built, they wouldn't have to have them.
We'll see.
Any other items on finance?
Nope, that's it.
Any other committees?
I do.
Mrs. Rubio?
I would like to talk to you about the Superintendent's Parent Advisory Council that held its initial meeting, and that initial meeting was held in June. The purpose was, of course, to set some guidelines and also with the goal of sharing concerns on behalf of the parties that are coming from each of the schools to the administrators, principals, curriculum directors, et cetera, that are present. the schools may bring up to 2 representatives per group. So this was all established in the first meeting. Eileen Paban, whom you are familiar with in talking about parental involvement, is the president of the council. Vice president is Allison Napolitano. Meetings will be once a month, second Wednesday of the month, except in November. And 2 of the meetings a year will be public meetings, open to other than the representatives and the members. So those public meetings would be October and April. Once the ground rules were established, the items that came up in the first meeting were before and after school care, the bomber blasts, concerns about fundraising, when you have more than one child in different schools, timing some of the fundraising, summer enrichment. One of the really great ideas was having this body's notes available in Spanish and other languages for parents on the portal so that they could read what was happening. And the only announcement that really was made during this meeting was a proud resource fair on November 1st in the SUES cafeteria. So we will see what the next meeting brings.
Which will be on September 12th.
And Mr. Esposito attended the first meeting, as well as myself.
And that meeting will be on the 12th, I believe,
Oh, yes, I should have said that.
September 12th.
Thank you.
And I heard good feedback from that meeting. I think the new format is working. Hopefully, it's going to sustain. But I think what you've got set up with a combination of a core group as well as, the opportunity for public will work very well.
I hope so. I hope
Any
so.
other committees?
Curriculum.
Curriculum?
The August 21st meeting, we discussed the summaries of, we discussed SAT scores, that the summaries the full summaries will come a little later. But we looked in general at where Sayreville fits, and we are right in line with the state and actually above the nationwide average on our average. This was the May numbers, correct? So that many of our students take those tests in November. The May is a different group. So take it as you will. One of our items under discussion was an additional world language option suggested through the public, American Sign Language. It is accepted by colleges, and it was just a discussion item because it would require a teacher, and then depending on student interest, how would that professional have a full teaching schedule? And then finally, we discussed STEM grant opportunities for the district.
Any other committees? Okay, hearing none, given the hour, I will dispense with my delegate to New Jersey School Board's report, because we do have another item under old business to discuss. We need to discuss marijuana. Now that I've got everyone's attention, I can see everybody picking their head up out of their cell phones. We received a correspondence via email from the mayor, and it appears that Old Bridge is adopting, or either has adopted or is considering adopting, an ordinance preventing any type of commercial organization from manufacturing or selling either medical or recreational marijuana within the Old Bridge borders. And this coincides with the pending state law change that may legalize marijuana in the state of New Jersey, and Old Bridge is just being proactive. And the mayor indicated that the Borough of Sayreville would also like to consider a similar ordinance and would be taking it up at their next council meeting. But he wanted the Board of Education to weigh in with regard to the educational aspects and impact of legalization and whether or not there was business opportunities within the borough for either its manufacture, sale, or distribution. So I have a feeling I think I know where the board wants to go on this, but I'm going to ask anyway what the board's position, if any, is with regard to this, and whether it's an ordinance that we would encourage the council's support of, encourage their opposition to, or if we simply want to take no position and allow the borough to weigh in. Dr. Labby, did I describe that
And just
correctly?
a little point of clarification. I don't believe in Old Bridge that they're completely banning the zoning of these establishments. I will say this, that the description leaves very little other places. But basically, it was anywhere in the proximity of a school, a YMCA, a church, a playground, and then they use a residential area, and then they say a general commercial area, which I would think is like Main Street in Sayreville or even on Washington Road. But I think that they leave it a little ambiguous and open for maybe someone establishing something like on Journey Mill Road or something like that, where it's kind of an open area, building something like that. Because the ordinance doesn't just completely ban it, it actually states different locations, which is the only type of place I could see that's kind of left out. You know, a commercial area that's not in a general commercial area. So just a little point of clarification.
And thank you for that clarification, because as I read that, I just assumed it was a blanket ban, but you're right, there is a loophole.
I think that they're saying there's a small
Area.
that an establishment could be zoned in, but the majority of places, no.
All right, so,
Can I ask a question?
Excuse me, Kevin, can I ask? Oh, go
Well,
ahead,
yeah.
Nathan.
Well, all right, so perfect example, Journeyman. Let's just say, for example, we say, or the council said it's up to them, you know what, they want to grow it and sell it, correct? They want a facility to manufacture it?
No, they're saying anything, like
anything
you can't
associated.
just,
So, if they're gonna do it in Old Bridge or East Brunswick or anywhere else, okay? My thing is, you don't think people are gonna travel 5-10 minutes to do, they're gonna travel. Why wouldn't we want the revenue? It's gonna happen. It's not like we're gonna stop this from happening.
well, and I think
Why
that's
wouldn't
why
we
they
want it
leave
in
certain
Sayreville?
areas open.
Yeah, just to me, it just makes sense. It's gonna happen 10 minutes away, or it could happen here. Let's take the revenue.
All right, so let me ask the first,
Can I
yeah,
just
Mrs.
ask,
Bloom,
did you
yes.
say they were including the sale of medical marijuana? They want to ban that
Medical
as
was
well?
included as well
Yeah,
in
it
the
was,
ordinance.
I think they're kind of looking ahead, seeing that there is the potential that that recreational marijuana will become legal at some point, but they definitely state in their ordinance, medical as well as recreational. And it's not the manufacturer, it's just any establishment that distributes it. So you don't have to actually be growing it or whatever. If you're just an establishment that distributing it, that includes you too.
Dr. Labby, do you know what the state law is now regarding medicinal marijuana? Can it be grown or dispensed anywhere?
I don't know.
So we don't even know if it might not be legal to do it here anyway.
Well, I mean, I'm sure it's legal somewhere. I believe,
Where is it
I
done?
believe the
It's
state
in
statute,
Woodbridge.
and I'm not,
There's the one right on Route 9.
I'm not well versed
Where
in
they
it.
grow it?
Oh, no, you said, where they
I would think
They
that
sell it.
the state statute for medicinal marijuana basically just says that it is legal to dispense or distribute
Right.
medicinal marijuana, and I believe that it is left up to the local municipality as to whether you want to allow an establishment like that in your,
Okay. So you're allowed to
Here.
prevent it?
I would
Here.
think that you could zone that. And that's what Old Bridge is doing. They're creating this ordinance for zoning purposes. So you're just not going to be able to get zoned in that particular area.
Several
Mr.
years-
Lewis, care to weigh in?
Smart boy.
Good idea.
Mr.
Sun-
Bashada.
Several years ago, the council passed an ordinance of you had to be 21 to buy cigarettes in Sayreville.
Yeah.
So, you know, that was
Yeah, and
brought up
hurt-
exactly what
that
you
would
said.
hurt- That hurt businesses, I'm sure.
I'm sure.
And
So
they
let-
just
so-
went around the corner and bought cigarettes.
Yeah, exactly.
So let me ask this question. I mean, first of all, does the board wish to weigh in on this at all? Yes or no?
I think we should.
All right, so Mr. Bashada is a yes. Mrs. Rubio? Do we wish to weigh in at all? Mrs. Bloom?
I think we should leave it up to the Borough Council.
Mr. Balka? No. Don't weigh in. Okay. Mr. Esposito?
Yeah, I think we should.
Mr. Walsh?
Just going on our 5-minute conversation there, I don't think we're informed enough to weigh in. I mean, if we were going to weigh in at a later date with some, study on it, I mean, there are things, of course, I wouldn't want to buy at school, and would I want to outlaw medicinal ones? No. I mean, it just seems there's a lot of information left out. So right now, I'd be a no. I don't think we should weigh in.
Mrs. Bacco?
Did he lead to believe that when it
Hang on,
when it
let's
comes
just
up?
go through and find out if we want to weigh in first. Mrs. Bacco? No, you don't want to weigh in?
No, I agree with John. I mean, we just don't know right now. There's too many, yes, we want this, but no, we don't want that.
And I'm a yes. I don't know what the tally is. I hope you can keep track.
So I counted 5 noes.
Okay, then we're not going to weigh in. The only thing I was going to suggest was that we weigh in with regard to the proximity of a school, because that's within our purview. But the board doesn't want to weigh in, so we can just let the mayor know that we don't wish to weigh in on this at this time.
You can read our new signs that we're putting up.
Okay. Anything else for old business, new business, other business?
Discussion, 3 items. I had a resident approach me about 2 weeks ago on a Sunday and mentioned that one of their family members was not accepted into VOTEC. It's a classified student. And he asked me, can the district provide some, when you go to VOTEC, you go either for electrician or plumber or carpenter, welder or something like that. He said, can the district provide something for this family member of his because he was rejected? I don't know why he was rejected from VOTEC, Middlesex County Vocational System. I don't know. But he was upset about it, and he asked me if there's anything that we can do, because I understand that his family member has to come here into the district, and he's looking for vocational training for this individual.
Dr. Labby, would it be appropriate for the parents to reach out to you and you can discuss the individual situation? I mean, certainly for September.
If it's a student with disability, the parent should reach out first and foremost to their child study team case manager.
But I think this is someone who's not currently yet in the district. They're moving in.
I don't know exactly. They approached me and just mentioned that the child was not accepted, the student was not accepted into the vocational system here in Middlesex County.
Right, but is this a Sayreville resident?
The individual I spoke with is yes. I don't know if the student is.
Oh, then I can't.
It
I'm
probably
not
is
gonna.
a student. The student probably is a resident of.
Yeah, I mean, if it's one of our students, our students, in the middle school or in the high school, they apply to go to the vocational technical school. And it's not uncommon that some of our students don't get accepted, including our students with disabilities. So if my advice is that if this is a child with a disability, which I think you said it was,
Yes.
then his or her parents should contact their child study team case manager, or they can also contact Mr. Nasser, the Director of Special Services, or Dr. Defina, the Special Education Supervisor at the secondary level. There are times when we can engage the vocational technical school in a conversation and ask them to reconsider, but we really have very little leverage in terms of whether children get accepted or not. So that's my recommendation. There's 3 different people that person can reach out to.
I know where the person lives. I will contact them.
If the person is not a Sayreville student, we can't talk to them about it.
I think they do live in Sayreville because he is a Sayreville resident. I'll go to his house. I know where he lives. I'll contact him. The other thing that I was going to bring up is when we came in, there's 2 pickup trucks out here that fenders are banged up and rust all over the bodies. Can we at least make them look acceptable? When they had the gray and blue buses, they weren't that bad, but when you have white pickup trucks with dents and rust all over them, it reflects on the district.
Are you talking about our maintenance vehicles?
Yes, there's 2 pickup trucks that, they're out here right now. We bought them within the last 4 years. They're 2 Ford pickup trucks, 3/4. If we can clean them up a little bit somehow, take the dents out of the bed. I know the issue was snow plowing. When they back up into a snow pile, they dented the right rear between the wheel well and the rear bumper. That, and then over the wheel wells, and in the beds, there's some rot also.
When you're talking about doing body work, naturally, if one of our vehicles is unsafe, we're going to repair it. If one of our vehicles is not functioning to the capacity in which it should, so it's not productive, we're going to repair it. But Tom, asking for us to make a $5,000 repair on a vehicle because of aesthetics, is that what we want to spend our money on?
Well, it's an appearance of the district. That's the reason I ask.
Well, I understand that it's a reflection of the district, but do we want to go ahead, if the truck is safe and the truck is functional, these are trucks that are meant to, be durable.
I just brought it up as, because I wouldn't drive it, to be very honest with you.
But we're transporting things that sometimes scratch the beds of our trucks. We're plowing, we're doing, that's what these trucks are built for. To make a $5,000 body repair on a vehicle just because of aesthetics. I'm not
So I think
sure.
what I would suggest is you've got a maintenance budget. You're the best person to administer that maintenance budget. Take a look at the vehicles. If you think we need to repair them.
Yeah, I mean,
repair
I'll
them.
bring it up to Mr.
If-
Comensberger, definitely.
If we don't, then we don't.
Okay, the last item is, our books are almost closed out. Do we have an idea how much we're going to put into reserve accounts?
The capital reserve will be 1 million. The
And-
emergency reserve will be 250,000. The maintenance is the only one I don't have.
I'm sorry, I can't hear.
The maintenance is the one that I don't have the number for yet.
Right, you had three accounts that you had set up. You
So
had,
capital is 1 million,
right,
emergency is 250,000. Those were the two priorities.
right, that's the security
And then-
emergency.
Right, so the maintenance would be up to 1 million, but I don't have a final number yet.
Any other items for new business?
I do.
Okay.
I just wanted to talk about the AP scores. I was looking at them, and I remember when we had first started and we made the change where everyone had to take the test, there was a lot of concern about students not taking them because it was required. And in my opinion, again, this year, the scores were very well.
Yeah.
And it seems like it is working. So I just wanted to know, is there any way that we could post these scores in some format on our website so our students can see how it's going so that they wouldn't be deterred from taking these classes because of that test?
Well, in the State of the Schools address, which will happen during our October meeting, it happens annually, we do that. That's when, according to DOE requirements, Dr. Shediak goes ahead and shares with the board state assessment scores. She always shares those AP scores. So those are put on my presentation, and those are actually put in the website.
Yeah, but is there any, but that would be part of a whole state of
Presentation.
address. It just was something so that I know that students would be able to see it, so they could say, oh, wow, doesn't look as bad as wasn't going to frighten me. Because now that every student is, like before when you had the scores, it could be assumed, oh, well, those were, the people taking it were those that were assumed were always going to do well. Now that everyone's taken it and the scores are still good, I think it's a good reflection on us.
I think it's a great reflection, but I think a lot of that comes from our teachers. I think our teachers really take the time to talk to our kids about giving their best effort
But I think
on those
sometimes one
assessments.
student can frighten another and might not get good
you know,
information.
but I
Mr. Lewis,
see
I'm going to
those.
ask you to weigh in on this. Do your teachers talk to you about the number of students who are getting, 3s and 4s and?
They don't. Every year before you would go into a class, say if you're a junior and you're going to be a senior, usually in May or June, another teacher or even a student that's taking that class will come in and talk about that class, and if it's the AP class, we'll talk about it. They don't reveal this percentage of the class scored this.
Well, no, I wouldn't expect individual student that, but just generally, there were a lot of 4s, or, are you encouraged to take the course and not fear the test, I guess is the question.
Yes, obviously their main objective kind of is to make you score that 4 or 5 on the AP test. But students are as a whole, given what the curriculum of the course will be. So.
Which is, if I may interrupt, which is what the AP teacher is going to.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I mean,
right.
I could see if our scores are declining, they keep going up.
Right,
And
and
I
I
think
think
our
that's
kids are
something
really
we
giving great effort on them. But I also think, too, it's not only a reflection of the attitude of our students taking it, and I do think that that's a part of it, but I also think it's the magnificent job that our teachers are doing teaching these courses. I mean, what inspires me the most is looking at some of these courses in which last year we saw marked increases. And then this year we continue to see those same increases. They keep going up in some of these classes. Our biology, mathematics, they keep going up, which I just think is very inspiring. And I think that, yes, it reflects the attitude of our kids taking these tests, no longer reflecting an attitude, well, I don't want to take this test, I'm just going to go through the motions taking it. They're trying their absolute best on these.
Right, which was, I think, some people had the fear of, and that
Yeah,
didn't happen.
but I also think they're trying their best because they're being, number one, motivated to try their best by the teachers, but number two, they're being taught at a very high level. The instruction that these kids are getting is the instruction that is necessary for
Right,
an
and
advanced placement class.
I agree with you, and so, but I just think it's something we should advertise per se, something that makes
Yeah, and
the
we'll
community
figure
or
out how to
the
celebrate that,
student
yeah.
population be able to get that information easily,
Yeah.
because it is something we're doing so well.
Well, we're doing better, but comparatively speaking, are we outscoring other
Yeah,
districts?
nationally, we are
If we're-
doing
if we're
well.
not,
Oh, yeah, we're doing
doing
really
very
good. I
well
mean,
nationally.
and there's so many, I mean, you look at the research now in advanced placement, it's not, they look at, getting the 3 and above and how unproductive it is for children that get 2s and below a 3. You have kids in some school districts, they're taking 3 and 4 AP classes and they're getting 2s on them. That hurts them more than it helps them. But our kids in general, they score really well, comparative to, our county, but comparative to the state and comparative nationwide. And what it reflects is that we don't just have advanced placement courses to have advanced placement courses. We have advanced placement courses where our students are scoring at a level in which it reflects that we have what was designed to truly be an advanced placement course.
Right, but I think sometimes what happens is like, we could have scores and you'll have from each, like, say like one class, the average is considerably lower than another class. And I think sometimes people compare them to each other, but really they need to be compared to the national average of the same class.
Yeah.
So I think something like that would be very beneficial, so people could see how well we're doing nationally. It's not like saying, oh, one class isn't doing well and another one is. They both could be doing well from a national level. Some tests are just more difficult.
Okay, any
Oh,
other
we
discussion?
do
No.
that at AP now.
No, well, we can.
We can do that then?
We can.
Yeah.
Right,
But we can
maybe-
put something together
Yeah,
to
because like
celebrate.
some classes, some of those tests, 5s are more prevalent than
Right.
in other classes nationally. So I didn't, this way people can see like some sort of comparison, because I think we're doing very well even at that level.
I mean, across the board, our English
Ac-
scores, our math scores, our science scores, it just.
It's not just an AP, we're succeeding across the board.
Yes.
Well, but it's very reflective in AP.
Yeah.
And what's great too is, the percentage of kids taking them too. You
Right, but
might
it
have,
just seems like we always have our sports blasted on. It's so easy to find
can-
how
we
our
can find a
sports
way to
teams are
celebrate
doing,
that.
but this is
Yeah.
just sort of,
I mean,
and mixed in a
when you
state of
compare
address.
us, we're, not a lot of districts require their kids to take their AP tests. So the kids that take them generally are the kids that do well on them. We require all of our kids to take them, and our results are really good. So, yeah, we can find a way to try to celebrate that.
Thank you.
Any other items for new business? Okay, hearing none, we will open up to public. For any item concerning the district, please come to the microphone and state your name and address for the record. Okay, we will close public, and our next meeting is scheduled for September 17th.
Which is
Have
a
a
Monday.
great start to the school year. Can I take a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
By Mrs. Bloom, do I have a second?
Second.
By Mr. Callahan, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.